I admire anyone who's honest and straightforward, and there never was any man more honest and straightforward than John.
My ex-boss, my ex-father-in-law, one of my best friends, my mentor, my compadre.
We became instant friends. I mean, it was just almost within seconds. It was like we knew one another all of our lives.
I always called him Captain Decibel because he got such a powerful voice. It's the most amazing voice I ever heard.
The voice doesn't lie. The voice is immediate, like a punch in the mouth. No matter how many times you hear it, it's undeniable. No matter when you were born, it's undeniable.
He was resilient, and he was persistent.
I used to call him Abe Lincoln with a wild side. He was like, he had all the integrity and the power of one of the fathers of our country, but he was a wild man.
We were old men together, and we'd been young men together, and we'd come all the way through our life. We both had tremendous success, and we'd both been down.
He touched people outside country music. He touched them in all types of music, and it's going to influence a lot of people like myself and other artists to come for a long time.
Take Chris Christopherson and John Prine and me and 14 other artists all put together to equal one Johnny Cash.
There's nothing artificial about his music or his persona.
He was always first and foremost a man, and I think that people appreciate that. I think they appreciate how genuine he was.
I like Johnny Cash. I mean, come on, what's not to like? For me, he was the ultimate male singer-songwriter.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
He was a superstar, a role model, a mentor, a father, but for me, he was my very good friend. I'm Chris Christopherson, and these are just a few of the words used to describe the legendary Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash, everybody!
With the upcoming release of Walk the Line, a new film by James Mangold starring Joaquin Phoenix as John, Reese Witherspoon as June Carter, friends, fans, and filmmakers have come together to celebrate the Man in Black.
I think a lot of people, really from my generation, we know of, Johnny Cash from the late 60s and 70s. So it was really interesting to learn about his early years.
It's kind of hard to imagine now that, the first music by Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, how little it took them to change the world with a guitar, a bass, and a set of drums and a microphone.
I played John from about 19 to 37, and into the beginning of his musical career in Memphis.
Excuse me, sir. You the owner of this place?
That's me.
Hello, I'm J.R. Cash.
Sam Phillips.
Sam Phillips was sort of the architect of that sound. He started Sun Studios, and he discovered Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis.
You want to cut a record, son? It's $4.
Well, what about the guys there on the wall in the pictures?
They're on my label.
How do I get on there?
You audition.
Right now?
Johnny literally puts his foot in the door and gets an audition.
Right here is where the beginning of the Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two come about, and that boom chicka boom chicka sound.
He was hit by a truck, and you were lying out in that gutter dying, and you had time to sing one song. One song that would let God know what you felt about your time here on earth. One song that would sum you up. That's the kind of song that truly saves people. From there it becomes Johnny Cash.
To have songs on the radio and to have his own record in his hand. And as that came about, he was just having fun with his friends. I don't think that they looked at it like, well, 50 years from now, people are going to be looking at us as if we blazed the trail, we got all this going.
No one had done this before. No one knew quite how to cope with it either. What does it mean to be a rock star when no one's lived that life before you? How do you do it?
He meets June Carter. In some ways she is his opposite. Something very, very grounded about her, something very self-assured.
She's performing at Texarkana Municipal Auditorium, and she's sort of doing her country girl bit, and that's when Johnny Cash first sees her.
Oh my gosh!
She's running on stage, and she gets caught in his guitar strings.
Right on my... Hold on, Bill, I'm coming!
Reckon when, June?
Don't worry, I can keep this funny for at least 2 minutes. And I tell you what, Bill, he's a strapping boy, that Johnny Cash.
There's a connection between the two of them in the very beginning.
You know, when I was in the service, I used to look at pictures of you know, in magazines. No, no, it wasn't like that.
They fell in love, and for 10 years, their intimacy only existed on stage. The only chance they had to be alone together was when there was a microphone and 5,000 people.
So what are we gonna sing, Johnny? You got me out here. Is that where your plan ends?
Well, I always liked that song, Yours Time's a Wastin'. Let's do that one.
John, I am not going to sing that song. It's inappropriate. I recorded it with my ex-husband. I'm not going to sing it.
Well, there's no better way to put it behind you.
There's a lot of inherent drama in Johnny and June's relationship.
John, it's really none of my business, but you seem like you have a nice family.
June!
Just please get away from me.
They had a really sort of tumultuous 10 years of push and pull.
Tell me you don't love me.
I don't love you.
You're a liar.
When he became a rock and roll star, he went into the ring of fire, as June would say.
I fell into a burning ring of fire. Went down, down, down.
Oh my God, John!
June was a real stabilizing force in John's life. I think he needed that force in his life.
Where's my friend John? Did he get high? Or is he incognito? Is he gone? Because I don't like this guy, Cash.
He could do without the drugs and without the acclaim, but I don't think he could do it without June.
I'm on a tour with you again, June. I miss the tour. I miss the music.
After 10, 12 years of being around each other, they ultimately are available and ready to commit to each other.
And it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire, the ring of fire.
They were a true couple, and each of them kind of legendary. She was from this, you know, the first family of country music, the Carter family.
About finding someone who really is your soulmate and your best friend.
No, I'm not. I had a friend who needed help. You're my friend.
They were so dreadfully in love. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I have never seen anybody any more in love than they were. And now that they're both gone, it's like the biggest part of my heart is ripped out of my shoulders. And I have trouble talking about it. But they just meant so much. And they always will. I mean, I'll go to my grave thinking about John and June.
When we return, a look at the 10-year effort to get Walk the Line made and Johnny Cash's personal involvement in the development of the film.
One of the amazing things about this project was just how heavily involved John was in the script. From the very beginning, he was reading the scripts, and my mother also. The way the film came about, and who produced it, who directed it, and everything, that was all their choosing.
When James Mangold and Kathy Conrad came on board around 2000 to bring this to fruition, it just seemed like a natural thing. It took a long time to happen, but we all felt it would be worthwhile.
I mean, the reality is when you're going to meet Johnny Cash and June Carter, you become aware of the awesomeness of your task because there's a responsibility to get not just the details right, which is easier in a way, but to get their souls.
Cut. Beautiful.
We cut. We cut.
Reloading one more time.
Reset, please. Get everybody.
It was something that we were going to experience together, for better or for worse. You know, we were going to take on these characters.
What was I thinking? I must have been crazy. Y'all gonna blow this tour. You can't walk no line.
It's been really interesting and humbling and harrowing all at the same time.
Such a wonderful energy and life to her, and Reese just radiates that.
You say you're looking for someone who's never weak, but always strong.
I couldn't have found John without her June.
Kathy pushed a newspaper in front of me with a picture of Joaquin on it, and we both looked at the picture and felt like we were looking at young John.
He sounds quite a bit like my dad in the way that he moves, you know, and he captures the light of Johnny Cash and the figure. He also captures the darkness.
I believe Joaquin was born to play this role, I must say, with no hyperbole. That's a hell of a thing to say, but I believe it with my whole heart.
One thing that, you know, I had to do from the beginning was to learn to play guitar as best as I could to really familiarize myself with that instrument, because it was such an extension of John. Reese and I both worked really closely with T-Bone.
I don't think that either of them would mind my saying that they were both terrified of you know, stepping into these shoes, but they both did it with great courage and love.
Something that Mangold told me very early on. He said, you know, you're not Johnny Cash, and you're not going to be Johnny Cash. It's your interpretation. If people want to hear Johnny Cash, he's made a couple records, and they can get those if they like.
Johnny Cash toured, you know, with a group of pretty well-known musicians now, Elvis and Roy Orbison and Jerry Lee Lewis. We knew that it was going to be a little bit of a tricky casting proposition because we knew that a lot of people have images of these musicians as older musicians. They don't really recall them when they were 20. No one's really seen Elvis when he was 20.
You sounded good tonight, Cash. Real tight.
Oh, thanks, man.
I want some chili fries. I get to play him at the very early stages of rock and roll when it's just letting loose and about feeling the music. It's really a crazy thing to go through.
Hey, you hear Orbison doing our song? He turned it to a two-step. Listen. Don't cut it off, whatever you do. I need it to run my fingers through.
We're playing these people who would become legends, who aren't legends quite yet.
How come you don't never try this brand of picking, Luther?
I'm playing my father, Waylon Jennings. It's definitely strange. I mean, especially because they've converted me with movie magic into this, you know, like 19-year-old Waylon.
Have yourselves a pine box, boys. Nobody follows the killer.
I kind of was just given the freedom from the director, great director, to make Jerry Lee Lewis a person because nobody's ever really seen what he's like.
Tell me this way, now you're gonna die.
It's been great working with Jim Mangold. His passion has just really driven this project, and it's really exciting to work with somebody who loves the material so much.
Actors have a tremendous amount of confidence with Jim. Allowing him to get to places with them, they trust him. And I think that in order to get the kind of performances that we got in Walk the Line, there has to be that trust.
I hope that if John or June saw the movie, they saw a film made with such respect for them and such love for them.
Here's the one and only, Mr. Johnny Cash.
When I think about what Johnny and June's reactions would be to the movie, I always envision in my mind's eye that they're up there looking down and watching, and I have to feel that they're smiling.
Coming up, Marshall Grant shows us Johnny's first guitar used on his earliest recordings, plus Merle Haggard's first-hand experience at one of Johnny's classic prison concerts, when we return.
That little guitar, triple alt 28 Martin that my wife bought me for a birthday present. Every song that we recorded on Sun, John used that guitar. And every song that he wrote that was recorded on Sun, he used that little guitar to write it on.
Well, that's all right, Mama. That's all right with you. That's all right, Mama. But just anyway.
Elvis played it not on the stage or anything, but he'd come in the dressing room sometime when we all worked together, and he'd pick it up and play on it. Just about all the people on Sun at one time or another used it. It's been a lot of places. It's been all over the world. We carried it most of the time without even a case on it. If you look at it up close, it's got a lot of scratches and boo-boos on it that John put them every one on there. I never put one of them on it. It's a lot of history to that little guitar.
Mr. Cash, why don't you refrain from performing any tunes that remind the inmates that they're in prison?
You think they forgot? Johnny Cash came to San Quentin, and the year was 1958, and I was a young inmate there. And he came in there, and he looked over at this guard. And there was a guard over there that was kind of going, chewing gum and looking around like he was very bored with the whole job.
I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire.
Cowboy Jack Clement had a great statement. He said there's two kinds of people. There's people who love Johnny Cash and those who will. I like that.
One of my all-time favorite people in the world, you know, and a great friend. I've never had any mortal friends any better than Johnny Cash.
I think what makes Johnny Cash an icon or a legend is that you can't put him in a box. He's sort of walked every path in life.
It's about being a genuine artist and being the conveyor of truth. And I think that's what sort of makes his legacy endure.
His songs will live forever. After we're all gone and the world is still turning around, Johnny Cash will live forever.
Not only is Johnny Cash America, Johnny Cash is the working man. He is anyone who's ever been brokenhearted, who's had immense tragedy, or who's ever just made like really bad mistakes. You know, just whatever the mistake is, Johnny put it in song.
I think they recognize in John something in themselves. They can relate to the voice, to the man.
What I realized finally about Johnny Cash's music, it sparked something in my soul and gave me emotions that I've never felt before.
Johnny Cash will be cool forever because he was just so real. It's just the absolute charisma and gravitas of that man.
He never forgot the power of a simple guitar and a man's voice. And it may not be the most perfect voice, and it may not be the most perfect guitar playing, but you can be damn sure that he was being honest.
I'm not even sure the John Cash I think of really ever existed, because he, in my mind, is such a mythical person.
I can't think of an artist of any kind that represented integrity in every fiber of its being like John did.
He had a magic about him, and it's hard to really define what that was. And I don't think it'll ever be done. And if it was, it wouldn't be magic anymore, right?
There's such beauty and truth and sorrow and joy in his music. He was always honest with himself, and I think people could sense his truth.
What's with the black?
Looks like you're going to a funeral.
Maybe I am.
Johnny Cash. In 1968, he was coming out of a dark period of his life.
His marriage had fallen apart.
His voice had been torn up
very badly by the pills.
He canceled shows. He'd been banned from the Grand Ole Opry.
His behavior in the studio had alienated just about everybody who worked with him.
He was considered a write-off by a lot of people. The industry, he had made a mess out of things.
And it was touch and go whether he was going to have a recording career anymore.
But when he cleaned himself up and kicked amphetamines and was starting to get his life back together, he wanted to use a prison concert to really announce that he was back.
He was a very humble country guy. He was from Dyess, Arkansas, came from rough conditions early on in life.
He identified with working class, with guys in prison, with the downtrodden.
I think John felt a connection with everybody who was taking a beating.
He would go to Vietnam and do shows for the soldiers, and he'd come back and he'd go to an Indian reservation where they were fighting the United States government and play concerts for them.
Cash believed in people, not ideas. And so he was concerned with people's struggles and people who've been left behind.
Johnny had been playing prisons from the 50s and felt at home in them and felt an affinity with the inmates.
He'd been going to Folsom prison for a long time.
He was an anti-authoritarian. It was in his character and in his bones. And so, yeah, he related to those folks, and they related to him.
I don't think anybody thought that Johnny Cash shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. But people did seem to think that Johnny Cash had, served hard time.
When he wrote the song, Folsom Prison, that was an act of imagination. He had never been in prison. Cash never served any time.
John always wanted to be in prison. He wanted that image, he wanted that legend that, hey, if this guy been in jail, he would never say no, never was. He'd let that image and that legend grow on its own.
Of course, in all the little newspaper stories about him getting busted here and there and everywhere, and him kicking out the footlights at the Grand Ole Opry, crashing June's Cadillac, and burning down the National Forest, and all of the rest of this stuff that he'd done. He was caught smuggling more than 1,000 pills into the United States from Mexico in a guitar case. If he'd been Joe Blow, he could have been in the federal slammer real easy.
Cash said when he sort of came back in '67 and he was speaking to his producer and his label that this was the record he wanted to make, that this was a dream for a long time. The label wasn't so excited about it.
There was some resistance. They didn't really want a live album from a prison. They wanted him to be more presentable. They wanted him to be the cleaned up Johnny Cash.
Cash, I think, knew his audience from all the other performances that he had done in prison, knew that it would be absolutely dynamic.
I think that he saw something in it that was renegade, uncharted territory perhaps.
January 13th, I'll be at Folsom Prison with Gene and the boys. You listen to the tapes. You don't like them? Toss them.
It was change of the guard at Columbia Records or CBS that I think ultimately made it possible for him to do so. Bob Johnson, who had produced Dylan and some others, Earl Scruggs and so forth, became the man in charge and immediately signed off on it for Cash.
Bob Johnson is to be patted on the back. His mind was open to things other than what was the normal fare on Music Row. Johnny Cash found a willing compatriot in Bob Johnson.
This was a gutsy move to go to Folsom Prison to play. There's no question about it.
Folsom, California is northeast of Sacramento, about 20 miles, between 20 and 30 miles, on the American River.
Well, I think Folsom Prison has always been kind of a mystique-type prison. Folsom Prison really had a pretty violent beginning. While they were building the prison, they had several killings and several escape attempts over the years.
We knew it was a bad place, pretty rough. That much we learned about it after we knew we were going. And it's a little scary when you think about, not knowing what to expect, never been in prison before.
It sounded like a grand hall, but it was a tiny cafeteria with a makeshift stage.
No auditorium, it's just a big metal echoing cafeteria.
This is where we brought Johnny into the main dining room, number 2, where he could take and put on his stage, which was made from the platform of my boxing ring. The stage was set here, and we had the visitor setting along the side here. We had it decorated as best we could for just a plain old mess hall, because we had to feed at least 1,000 men at a time. We had to feed them in 2 shifts so that they could make sure that everybody got fed, then everybody got to see the show that way.
There was 2 shows, and the first show was in the morning. That album was recorded in the morning. Musicians' hearts don't beat till noon, and to do a show at 11 o'clock in the morning is just unthinkable.
Cash had his entourage with him, and he didn't go out and begin playing himself at the very beginning. There was Statler Brothers and Carl Perkins.
As he walked in the door, the people went completely wild and just kept talking about him and hooting and hollering and clapping for him. He made a very grand entrance.
Yeah, everybody was really enthusiastic. Of all the bands we had come here, the famous people, they were more enthusiastic about Johnny Cash than anything. They was really up and really exciting.
But when Cash came out, he taunted the guards and the warden and politicians, and made it clear that he felt a great deal of sympathy for the people who were inside and had paid their dues.
He would take a shot at the warden. He would put the warden down, expecting, of course, thunderous support and applause from the inmates. But it was more of like a ha 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 ha. That was all they got from it, because they're thinking, I don't want to laugh at this guard or not.
I got to be here tomorrow. Johnny's going to be gone.
Yeah, that's right.
It was like lightning on stage.
It's an artist at his absolute rawest essence. Heart, soul, spirit, song, guitar. Bad conditions. But he showed them what he had there, and he was ready for it.
You really can tell that he's in the moment and that he feels the electricity just like the inmates are feeling the electricity.
It's not an audience that sits back and applauds at the end of a song. I mean, it's an audience that yells every time they hear a line they like.
Cash has said if he had yelled break, that's what would have happened. He knew he had them right at the edge.
There could have just as easily been a riot as there had a gospel song. He knew just how far to take it and when to let up.
I mean, you can tell that these guys are connecting with Cash and that he's connecting with them on a way that really goes beyond entertainment.
That's a hard crowd. They would know if he were conning them.
He really understood where were we at and how we felt, and he identified with us, I think, the way we identified with him. It really come across in his music and the way he related. That's what was special about it.
When Johnny Cash left there, those guys had something that they could keep with them and recall for years and years and years.
They hear Johnny's music everywhere, on the yard and in the music rooms and in the band rooms and TV and radio. It's part of our lives, Really one of us, we think.
Jailhouse record went through the roof.
At Folsom Prison really revived his career in many respects. Folsom Prison Blues was a hit again.
It was big. It was big. Like I said, he recorded the song the second time after 13 years, and he wound up the #1 record.
It completely reestablished his tough guy persona, and it proved to the record company that they should listen to him.
He goes into Folsom and nails that sucker to the ground, and it's all over, folks. They have to deal with Johnny Cash again now.
It really was a triumphant moment. It was the moment where he could say, this is what I wanted to do. You told me I couldn't do it. I did it, and look what happened.
He didn't waste much time going to San Quentin, repeating the formula, as it were.
To follow it up with the Live at San Quentin album, which had the song A Boy Named Sue on it. I mean, A Boy Named Sue was a novelty song. Cash didn't write it, but it was an enormous hit. That hit in 1968, and within a year, he was outselling the Beatles.
Those 2 albums made a statement about who Cash was, I think, to an audience beyond the country audience. He suddenly was an important American recording artist, not just a country recording artist.
It was nice that he had a hit. And
that turned into the success of that TV show.
In that network television show that he hosted from 69 to 71, he welcomed people like Bob Dylan, like Neil Young,
James Taylor and Joni Mitchell, and people that didn't normally go through Nashville.
A lot of country at that time was reacting against rock and roll. And what Cash did was he sort of brought those two things together. He was singing his music, but he was taking a rebellious stance. And he attracted a whole new audience of rock and rollers.
And it's really at a time when the nation was polarized politically, where young and old were sort of pitted against one another. Cash was culturally reaching across tremendous divides, political divides, generational divides, artistic divides, and saying these people matter. We can find common ground in art.
I think the Folsom Prison album is my favorite album of all time. It is the absolute bar and standard for, I used to say country music, but for all American music. And I think it absolutely brought him back to the forefront of everything and gave him a palette and a platform to work off of for the next 15 or 20 years.
I got the laryngitis.
She had a wild sense of humor.
June was a kick. June was a riot.
June had this ultra hillbilly persona, but she was a very sophisticated person.
She was very nurturing. She was very sweet. She had a very motherly kind of quality about her.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
How you doing, John?
Johnny was an incredibly charismatic guy. The guy was a rock star.
He was a troublemaker.
He was resilient, and he was persistent.
From the outside, it looked impossible. From the inside, it looked impossible. But the two of them understood each other in ways that nobody else never would.
They were definitely soulmates.
He was a fan of hers before they ever met. He grew up loving the Carter family.
He grew up listening to her voice. He could pick her voice out of all the different Carter family singers, and he was really drawn to her.
He first laid eyes on her when he came to Nashville and went to the Grand Ole Opry and saw the Carter family act, and he fell for her on the spot. So when he left Nashville, he went back to his regular life with dreams of June Carter.
They were brought together when Mother Maybelle and the Carter sisters and Johnny Cash found themselves touring on the same bill.
He met her backstage, and the first thing he said to her was, "I'm going to marry you one day."
It wasn't really until the Carter family started touring with Cash in the early 60s that it seems clear something started to develop between the two of them.
He had his agent book her onto the Johnny Cash traveling show and got to have her within his sphere of influence that way.
Johnny understood that June could be a powerful duet partner as well as a friend, so sought her out to join him on the stage.
Hey folks, what do you say we get June Carter out here again? Maybe she'll sing with me. Well, come on, June, I never sing with you.
People that sang with him kind of just got in the way. But June had a voice that was so unique and so different, it somehow worked.
And he learned, I think, a lot from June about stage. He learned a lot about how to present himself, delivery.
They made great music together, and I think the interaction on the stage is what really made it come together.
You could always see how much they were enjoying each other.
There was that playfulness and there was that tenderness.
Sometimes you'd catch Cash in the middle of a number just kind of looking at her.
The love obviously blossomed when they were on the road.
The early part of their relationship was him going full tilt for her and her kind of backing off and coming forward, and she was at first reluctant. You know, she was married, he was married.
She talked about being just horrified that she had fallen for a married man, and that they weren't fooling around, but it was obvious that they were in love.
June knew that this was fire and gasoline, that this was a dangerous combination.
That's when she got the idea for the song Ring of Fire.
June did write Ring of Fire about the yearning she felt for Cash and how destructive it was, and it was something she wanted and couldn't have, and it hurt.
It's not wrong, Jude. This ain't wrong.
As you see in the movie, a lot of that kind of back and forth between them trying to negotiate a romance while they're both married, and also while Johnny's struggling with some pretty serious drug addiction.
Initially, he took amphetamines just to keep going, and he said it gave him a sense of confidence on stage. But it quickly became excessive and abusive.
He was deeply into pills. I mean, deeply, deeply into pills.
It's amazing that he lived because he was taking 100 pills a day. You know, Johnny would reach into his pockets, and just by putting his hand in his pocket, the sheer volume of pills caused pills to spill out all over the floor.
In his first marriage, he would get loaded up on pills and start fires at the most inopportune times. I mean, he was a handful. He was really a handful.
For the first couple of years that I knew both of them, I thought all June knew how to say was, "Where's John?" Because he was apt to disappear on you in a minute.
That was a big factor in the relationship. I mean, that was one of the reasons that June did and did not want to be involved with him.
It's apparent that only one person could have saved my father from his own self, and that was my mother.
She saw something in him. She looked at him and said, you know what, he's not beyond saving. There's quality and nobility there, and I'm not giving up on it.
June was there to tap him on the back, to slap him in the face, to grab those pills, to chase people away who were bringing the pills.
She literally would stand him up and point him in the right direction, and when he fell down, she'd stand him up and point him in the right direction again.
She was his anchor. When he would go off and go crazy, you know, she was the one who was waiting for him.
Cash hit bottom on his own. There was that day when he went into the cave down near Chattanooga, where he had been a couple of times. Hank Williams Jr. had taken him there, and it's this complex of caves. He'd been high for several days, and he hadn't slept for a week, and he was at the end of his line, and he went in there to die. He walked in there by himself and kept on going through all these different passages, and when his flashlight died, he sat down and tried to die. The way he told it, he said he got this idea inside him that this was not his time to die, and it was not his choice when he was to die, and that he had to get up and get out of there. So here he is inside this cave, who knows how far, a mile underground or more, and it's pitch black. And he somehow or other made his way out. And there was June and his mother and a hamper full of food, and they took him on back home, and that was the rebirth of Johnny Cash.
He cared enough about the damage that he would do with his wild side that he would change it, you know.
It is a miracle in a lot of ways that he came back, and June Carter in a lot of ways did save his life.
She really brought him back from the brink of death a number of times, both physically and emotionally.
June Carter was an angel for John.
John was struggling with these demons, and June was the weapon against them.
You are not nothing. You're a good man.
She understood the struggle that he was going through, and she also understood what it would take to reclaim him.
He kicked it that first time around, and he started into Bible study and really started trying to live the straight life. And he and June got married, and they had John Carter, and so they became a very respectable couple.
You could see she was utterly devoted to this man. I mean, this is a woman who was born in the family that almost invented country music. She could have had a solo career, but she always willingly, lovingly took a back seat to Johnny. Her career was keeping Johnny on line, and that was an enormous accomplishment.
She would never really imagine from how they seemed together as an institution, the amount of laughter and kidding each other that went on between them.
I got a chance to see them together one morning. We were walking through the house, and there were these old trunks. And June told me that in the 70s, maybe the 80s, Johnny was going through the trunks. He found all these love letters that Elvis had written June back in the 50s. And these love letters made him really angry. So he took all the love letters from Elvis, and he went out in his canoe out on the lake, and he ripped them up and he threw them in the lake, you know? And she's telling me this, and he's just sort of looking, sort of nodding, and then she looks at him and she says, Johnny, those letters would be worth a lot of money now.
They were a lot of fun to be around. Johnny and I could be in a corner talking, and I'm not even aware that June's in the room, and you know, I'll ask him something, and June would finish the rest of the story that he started. They were definitely soulmates.
You know, when they were together, you could see there was a bond there that no one else was getting close to.
It's hard to imagine Cash in his later years coming to the kind of peace that he came to without June in his life.
They certainly hung by one another through a lot of hard times. She was there. She was there even when John wasn't sure he was.
They had a wonderful, loving relationship as long as I knew them, you know, right to the end.
They really were a throwback to that era when stars came up from the ranks of their fans and cared about them and considered them family. And now that they're gone, nobody else does that. They were really the last of that very gracious, very beautiful, loving kind of country stars, and I miss them.
Their relationship fit together perfectly, and it did all through their life.
He was hit by a truck, and you were lying out in that gutter dying, and you had time to sing one song. One song that would let God know what you felt about your time here on earth. One song that would sum you up. That's the kind of song that truly saves people.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
Ask you how you came up with that sound. Steady like a train, sharp like a razor.
We'd play faster if we could.
The taste of love is sweet.
We're all going to hell for the songs we sing.
And what about me, Charlie? Am I going to hell?
No, June, you're beautiful.
Bound by wild desire, I fell into a ring of fire.
Sorry, it just happened.
You should try taking credit for something every once in a while.
Come on, baby.
Baby, 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 baby.
I fell into a burning ring of fire.
Tell me you don't love me.
I don't love you.
Liar.
And the flames went higher.
Mr. Cash, why don't you refrain from performing any tunes that remind the inmates that they're in prison? You think they forgot?
The ring of fire.
Joaquin Phoenix, Reese Witherspoon.
And what's with the black?
It's like you're going to a funeral.
Maybe I am.
Walk the line.